Chapter 4 The Ghost. There was a comparative calm in the Wormwood household for about a week after the Superglue episode. The experience had clearly chastened Mr. Wormwood, and he seemed temporarily to have lost his taste for boasting and bullying. Then suddenly he struck again. Perhaps he had had a bad day at the garage and had not sold enough crummy second-hand cars. There were many things that make a man irritable, and he arrives home from work in the evening, and a sensible wife will usually notice the storm signals and will leave him alone until he simmers down. When Mr. Wormwood arrived back from the garage that evening, his face was as dark as a thundercloud, and somebody was clearly for the high jump pretty soon. His wife recognised the signs immediately and made herself scarce. He then strode into the living room. Matilda happened to be curled up in the living room, in the armchair in the corner, totally absorbed in the book. Mr. Wormwood switched on the television. The screen lit up. The programme blared. Mr. Wormwood glared at Matilda. She hadn't moved. She had somehow trained herself by now to block her ears to the ghastly sound of the dreaded box. She kept right on reading, and for some reason this infuriated the father. Perhaps his anger was intensified because he saw her getting pleasure from something that was beyond his reach. "Don't you ever stop reading," he snapped at her. "Oh, hello, Daddy," she said pleasantly. "Did you have a good day?" "What is this trash?" she said, snatching the book from her hands. "It isn't trash, Daddy. It's lovely. It's called The Red Pony. It's by John Steinbeck, an American writer. Why don't you try it? You'll love it." "Filth," Mr. Wormwood said. "If it's by an American, it's certain to be filth. That's all they write about." "No, Daddy, it's beautiful. Honestly, it is. It's about—" "I don't want to know what it's about," Mr. Wormwood barked. "I'm fed up with your reading anyway. Go and find yourself something useful to do." With frightening sadness, he now began ripping the pages out of the book in handfuls and throwing them in the waste paper basket. Matilda froze in horror. The father kept going. There seemed little doubt that the man felt some kind of jealousy. "How dare she?" he seemed to be saying with each rip of the page. "How dare she enjoy reading a book when he couldn't? How dare she?" "That's a library book," Matilda cried. "It doesn't belong to me. I have to return it to Mrs. Phelps." "Then you'll have to buy another one, won't you?" the father said, still tearing out pages. "You'll have to save your pocket money until there's enough in the kitty to buy a new one for your precious Mrs. Phelps, won't you?" With that, he dropped the now empty cover of the book into the basket and marched out of the room, leaving the telly blaring. Most children in Matilda's place would have burst into floods of tears. She didn't do this. She sat there very still and white and thoughtful. She seemed to know that neither crying nor sulking ever got anyone anywhere. The only sensible thing to do when you are attacked is, as Napoleon once said, to counterattack. Matilda's wonderful, subtle mind was already at work devising yet another suitable punishment for the poisonous parent. The plan that was now beginning to hatch in her mind depended, however, upon whether or not Fred's parrot was really as good a talker as Fred made out. Fred was a friend of Matilda's. He was a small boy of 6 who lived just round the corner from her, and for days he had been going on about his great talking parrot his father had got him. So the following afternoon, as soon as Miss Wormwood departed in her car for another session of bingo, Matilda set out for Fred's house to investigate. She knocked on his door and asked if he would be kind enough to show her the famous bird. Fred was delighted and led her up to his bedroom, where a truly magnificent blue and yellow parrot sat in a tall cage. "There it is," Fred said. "Its name's Chopper." "Make it talk," Matilda said. "You can't make it talk," Fred said. "You have to be patient. Oh, it talks when it feels like it." They hung around waiting. Suddenly, the parrot said, "Hello, hello." It had exactly like a human voice, Matilda said. "That's amazing. What else can it say?" "Rattle my bones," the parrot said, giving a wonderful imitation of a spooky voice. "Rattle my bones." "He's always saying that," Fred told her. "What else can he say?" Matilda said. "That's about it," Fred said. "But it's pretty marvellous, don't you think?" "It's fabulous," Matilda said. "Will you lend him to me just for one night?" No, Fred said, certainly not. I'll give you my next week's pocket money, Matilda said. That was different. Fred thought about it for a few seconds. All right then, he said, if you promise to return him tomorrow. Matilda staggered back to her own empty house, carrying the tall cage in both hands. There was a large fireplace in the dining room, and she now set about wedging the cage up the chimney and out of sight. This wasn't so easy, but she managed it in the end. Hello, 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 the bird called down to her. Hello, hello. Shut up, you nut, Matilda said, and she went out to wash the soot off her hands. That evening, while her mother and father and brother and Matilda were having supper, as usual, in the living room in front of the television, a voice came loud and clear from the dining room across the hall. Hello, 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 said. Harry, cried the mother, turning white. There's someone in the house. I heard a voice. So did I, the brother said. Matilda jumped up and switched off the telly. Shh, she said, listen. They all stopped eating and sat there very tense, listening. Hello, 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 came the voice again. There it is, cried the brother. It's burglars, hissed the mother. They're in the dining room. I think they are, the father said, sitting tight. Then go and catch them, Harry, hissed the mother. Go out and collar them red-handed. Father didn't move, seemed in no hurry to dash off and be a hero. His face had turned grey. Get on with it, hissed the mother. They're probably after the silver. The husband wiped his lips nervously with a napkin. Why don't we all go and look together, he said. Come on then, the brother said. Come on, Mum. They're definitely in the dining room, Matilda whispered. I'm sure they are. The mother grabbed a poker from the fireplace. The father took a golf club that was standing in the corner. The brother seized a table lamp, ripping the plug out of its socket. Matilda took a knife she had been eating with, and all four of them crept towards the dining room. The father kept well behind the others. Hello, 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 came the voice again. Come on, Matilda cried as she burst into the room brandishing a knife. Stick 'em up, she yelled. We've caught you. The others followed her, waving their weapons. Then they stopped. They stared around the room. There was no one there. There's no one here, the father said, greatly relieved. I heard him, Harry, the mother shrieked, still quaking. I distinctly heard his voice. So did you. I'm certain I heard him, Matilda cried. He's in here somewhere. She began searching behind the sofa and behind the curtains. Then came the voice once again, soft and spooky this time. Rattle my bones, it said. Rattle my bones. They all jumped, including Matilda, who was a pretty good actress. They stared round the room. There was still no one there. It's a ghost, Matilda said. Heaven help us, cried the mother, clutching her husband round the neck. I know it's a ghost, Matilda said. I've heard it here before. This room is haunted. I thought you knew that. Save us, the mother screamed, almost throttling her husband. I'm getting out of here, the father said, greyer than ever now. They all fled, slamming the door behind them. The next afternoon, Matilda managed to get a rather sooty and grumpy parrot down from the chimney and out of the house without being seen. She carried it through the back door and ran with it all the way back to Fred's house. Did it behave itself? Fred asked. We had a lovely time with it, Matilda said. My parents adored it. Chapter 5. Arithmetic. Matilda longed for her parents to be good and loving and understanding and honourable and intelligent. The fact that they were none of these things was something she had to put up with. It was not easy to do so, but the new game she had invented of punishing one or both of them each time they were beastly to her made her life more or less bearable. Being very small and very young, the only power Matilda had over anyone in her family was brain power. For sheer cleverness, she could run rings around them all, but the fact remained that any 5-year-old girl in any family was always obliged to do as she was told, however asinine the orders might be. Thus, she was always forced to eat her evening meals out of TV dinner trays in front of the dreaded box. She always had to stay alone on weekday afternoons, and whenever she was told to shut up, she had to shut up. Her safety valve, the thing that prevented her from going round the bend, was the fun of devising and dishing out those splendid punishments, and the lovely thing was that they seemed to work, at any rate for short periods. The father in particular became less cocky and unbearable for several days after receiving a dose of Matilda's magic medicine. The parrot in the chimney affair quite definitely cooled both parents down a lot, and for over a week they were comparatively civil to their small daughter. But alas, this couldn't last. The next flare-up came one evening in the sitting room. Mr. Wormwood had just returned from work. Matilda and her brother were sitting quietly on the sofa, waiting for their mother to bring in the TV dinners on a tray. The television had not yet been switched on. In came Mr. Wormwood in a loud check shirt and yellow tie. The appalling broad orange and green check in the jacket and the trousers almost blinded the onlooker. He looked like a low-grade bookmaker dressed up for his daughter's wedding, and he was cleverly very pleased with himself that evening. He sat down in an armchair and rubbed his hands together and addressed his son in a loud voice. "Well, my boy," he said, "your father's had the most successful day. He's a lot richer tonight than he was this morning. He has sold no less than 5 cars, each one at a tidy profit. Sawdust in the gearboxes, and the electric drill in the speedometer cables, a splash of paint here, and there are a few other clever little tricks, and the idiots were all falling over themselves to buy." He fished a bit of paper out of his pocket and studied it. "Listen, boy," he said, addressing the son and ignoring Matilda. "Seeing as you're going to be going into the business with me one day, you've got to know how to add up the profits you make at the end of each day. Go and get yourself a pad and pencil, and let's see how clever you are." The son immediately left the room and returned with the writing materials. "Write down these figures," the father said, reading from his bit of paper. "Car number 1 was bought by me for £278 and sold for £1,425. Got that?" The 10-year-old boy wrote the 2 separate amounts down slowly and carefully. "Car number 2, the father went on, cost me £180 and sold for £760. Got it?" "Yes, Dad," the son said. "I've got it." "Car number 3 cost £111, sold for £999.50. "Say that again, the son said. "How much did you sell it for?" £999.50, the father said. "And that, by the way, is another of my nifty little tricks to do the customers. Never ask for a big round number. Always go just below it. Never say £1,000. Always say £999.50. Sounds much less, but it isn't. Clever, isn't it?" "Very," the son said. "You're brilliant, Dad." "Car number 4 cost £86, a real wreck that was, and sold for £699.50. "Not too fast," the son said, writing the numbers down. "Right, I've got it. Car number 5 cost £637 and sold for £1,649.50. Got all those figures written down, son?" "Yes, Daddy," the boy said, crouching over his pad, carefully writing. "Very well," the father said. "Now work out the profit I made on each of the 5 cars and add up the total. Then you'll be able to tell me how much money your rather brilliant father made altogether today." "That's a lot of sums," the boy said. "Of course it's a lot of sums," the father answered. "But you're in big business, like I am. You've got to be hot stuff at arithmetic. I've practically got a computer inside my head. It took me less than 10 minutes to work the whole thing out." "You mean you did it in your head, Dad?" the son asked, goggling. "Well, not exactly," the father said. "Nobody could do that. But it didn't take me long. When you're finished, tell me what you think my profit was for the day. I've got the final total written down here, and I'll tell you right." Matilda said quietly, "Dad, you made exactly £4,303.50 altogether." "Don't butt in," the father said. "Your brother and I are busy with high finance." "But, Dad—" "Shut up," the father said. "Stop guessing and trying to be clever. Look at your answer, Dad," Matilda said gently. "If you're done, it is £4,303.50, Matilda said. There was another silence. The father's face was beginning to go dark red. "I'm sure it's right," Matilda said. You little cheat," the father suddenly shouted, pointing at her with his finger. "You looked at my bit of paper. You read it from what I've got written here." "Daddy, I'm on the other side of the room," Matilda said. "How could I possibly see it?" "Don't give me that rubbish," the father shouted. "Of course you looked. You must have looked. No one in the world could give the right answer just like that, especially a girl. You're a little cheat, madam. That's what you are, a cheat and a liar." At that point, the mother came in carrying a large tray of what were 4 suppers. This time it was fish and chips, which Miss Wormwood had picked up in the fish and chip shop on her way home from bingo. It seemed that bingo afternoons left her so exhausted, both physically and emotionally, that she never had enough energy left to cook an evening meal. So, if it wasn't TV dinners, it had to be fish and chips. "How are you looking so red in the face about it, Harry?" she said, as she put the trays down on the coffee table. "Your daughter's a cheat and a liar," the father said, taking his plate of fish and chips on his knee. "Turn the telly on and let's not have any more talk."